should we give like I got Anna is waiting. Giles, shall I let this person?
If there's anyone here, I guess.
Anna, yeah, Anna's first time I've seen that. Shall I admit that one as well?
Everyone, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say let anybody in.
Okay.
Well, we have a whole customer.
And Lucy. I got Lucy.
Mm-hmm. Just let them in.
She's joining as well.
Hi, Lythe.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
We are waiting for more people to join now.
Mm.
We need bouncers on the door throwing people in.
Yeah, I think if you want to start, Joe, I got a lot of people now, so there are a few people coming.
You'd like me to start?
Well, if you are, is John joining as well today? John Rowe.
Oh, I can see people are beginning to.
Yeah, you're probably best waiting a minute or so, I would imagine.
Okay. Okay, John is here now.
Hi, John.
Hi, John. Hi, John. Can you hear us?
Hi, how's it going? Hello, everyone.
Hello, John.
Hi,
Hello, Hello, cousin, I think.
Hi, John. So we're not starting yet. So.
Mm-hmm.
Wait till I've got a few people in.
Oh, I shall disappear. That didn't work. That did.
I've got Ollie, one of my staff, is joining as well. Okay. Hi, John. Do we let Giles start now?
I don't see why not. We've got 10 people in. It's a start.
Yeah, I got John Morris as well. He's joining. Okay, I think we got like 11 people now, or 10 people now. So.
That's a respectable start. As an arts centre, it would be you'd start as a thing. So, oh,
And we start with the people who are here.
yeah,
Yes.
Giles. That's,
So,
welcome again, Giles and James, the penultimate of this series.
Yes.
And it has been a very enjoyable series too. So I hand over to Giles and James.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming to the World Storytelling Cafe. And, well, many of you are return customers, so you know by now, if you're enjoying the stories, do please leave a donation for James and I in the hat. And if you're not enjoying the stories, we assure you the most insulting thing we could find would be your generosity. So, yeah, the penultimate story session. If you were here last week, you'll remember that High, Justice High, and the Third, the mysterious Trinity who were talking to King Gylfi, who'd begun his journey trying to find the woman who'd stolen a piece of his heart and a chunk of his land, and had found his way to Asgard, the home of the Aesir, the Viking gods. And they'd told him story after story. He still hadn't quite plucked up the courage to ask the question he really wanted to ask was, who is Gefjon? Where is Gefjon? And why did she do that to me? But he was learning so much in the meantime, and everything they told him prompted more questions and inquiries. And the last time they'd met, they'd suggested that he spend a bit of time with the heroes in Valhalla, which means the hall of the valiant, of the brave, and find out about them. And so, I mean, it's where he'd been eating, but he'd been eating quietly in the corner. Not having died fighting bravely in battle, he didn't really feel like he belonged there. But so on this occasion, he didn't go to the hall where he met with High, Justice High, and the Third. He went to Valhalla earlier than usual. Now, as he approached, he saw the sun gleaming on the golden roof of that huge feasting hall. The roof is made of interlocking shingles, but they're not shingles. They are huge gold war shields. And at the apex of the roof, there is the golden cockerel Gullinkraki, who by now, King Gylfi was getting such a good education. Hello. Getting such a good education that he knew that Gullinkraki would crow only once to announce that the day of the doom of the gods and of all the worlds and of all the giants was on them. The giants were attacking, coming over the Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, who needs less sleep than a bird, had blown his horn. Gullinkraki would, and the heroes would come out of Valhalla and fight to the death. They'd done this before. The way you got to Valhalla was by fighting to the death. Die with your sword in your hand. And Gylfi had learned also that it's what they did every day. So now as he walked towards that hall, it didn't trouble him at all that he could hear the sound of what sounded like a battle in progress. It was. It happened every day. The heroes would rise up, breakfast, stretch, wash, sometimes, and then get their weapons and oomph, they'd fight on the field in front of the hall, and they would hack each other to pieces. They would drive their swords through their best friends' necks. They would decapitate the person they'd had dinner with the night before. They would cut legs, arms, hands off people. And then, when all of it was done, somebody would go around with like a magic sponge, a bit like a coach or a PE teacher, and just people would reassemble. They'd get up good as new, and they'd all file inside Valhalla, mended, healed, better than ever, slapping each other on the back. Yeah, people who'd just been, well, you get it. And then they'd sit down, there'd be a massive, massive feast with roast meat and vegetables and huge quantities of, well, I was mentioning to Abdul earlier that I was working in Cairo this winter, and there was a young barman who worked a lot in Bahrain, and he asked us if we wanted some more English water, by which, of course, he meant beer. And that's what the heroes of Valhalla wanted as well, and they would wash off all their fighting with beer. So Gylfi walked towards that battle, and he looked and he saw, Gylfi was a king. He'd seen battle himself. expected to again, and hoped one day he would be brave enough to fight, to die with his sword in his hand, and come back here as a fully paid member. But for now, he waited for them to finish with their hacking and their cutting and their slashing. And when that was done, he waited for them to be raised up to life again, and then followed them into the hall and sat down and smiled and asked people about their day. And it was a good day, good day. I was about to get Knut there, but then he took my head off. I know, good shot, Knut, I'll get you tomorrow. It was all good spirits. And so Gylfi, he was sat next to a warrior whose name was Horst. And he asked Horst, I'm here learning so many fascinating stories. Who do you think I should know about here? So, I mean, for example, that man over there. Now, he looks like a warrior. But his friend? So thin, so small, so little. I'm surprised, to be honest. Then what kind of a king are you? Don't you know your soldiers? And don't you know it's not the size of the dog that's in the fight, it's the size of the fight that's in the dog? I can tell you who they are. And Horst explained that those two warriors were the best of friends. One was called Bodva Bjarki, which means battle Bjarki. And the other, we'll get to his name later, because that's kind of the point of this story. And the story started with this young warrior, Bjarki, riding through the night and through the driving rain. He was a very strong man, a very skillful warrior, and that's why people called him Battle Bjarki, which in Old Norse the word is Bodva Bjarki. Because this is in a way a story about names. Thing being that in ancient Scandinavia, there weren't so many names to go around. And people had a name and then a patronymic in the way that, so it might be something like, well, Anderson, for example, is a Scandinavian patronymic name, the son of Anders. And Anders, I believe, is an Old Norse name meaning foreigner. And it refers either to a Russian or to a German, I'm not sure. And, patronymic names like you have in Scotland, MacDonald means son of Donald. In Arabic, Bin Ezra means the son of Ezra, I believe, etc. My Arabic is a bit sketchy. Won't take you long to find that out, etc. So the name describes, I mean, even nowadays in Icelandic, you can be Gudmund's dottir, meaning the Gudmund's daughter, or Gudmund's son, Gudmund's son. But because there weren't that many names to go around, soon every little village and every dal, every valley in Norway and Denmark and Sweden, they were crammed filled with Bjorn Bjornsons. And apart from adding a Bjornson's son, well, people just didn't know whose Bjorn was whose. And that could be embarrassing. So, hence this tradition rose of giving people descriptive names like Battle Bjarki, like Eric the Red. Might have been one like me, Oranga, which is short for orangutan. There's nothing Old Norse about that. That's just London insults. Or you could have names like, there was a very famous Swedish king called Sven Forkbeard. Presumably his beard went like that. And there was another very famous Scandinavian king called Harald Bluetooth. And he was called Bluetooth, presumably because one of his teeth was blue, it happens. Now, he was famous because he negotiated a treaty between different warring tribes that used to fight, and Harald Bluetooth got them talking to each other, which is exactly what Bluetooth technology did a few years back with different phone operators. With Bluetooth, it didn't matter who you were with, you could just Bluetooth, right? Do you remember that? If you can get them to pair. And if you look at the symbol for Bluetooth on your computer, it's a runic symbol for this king's name, Bluetooth. It is named after him, which is kind of interesting. You get the point. So Battle Bjarki was riding through this rain, this driving rain. It was dark. And even though he's a brave and a strong man, he spread his cloak over the back of his horse's haunches so that the horse's haunches wouldn't get too wet, saying, "That's it, my lad, Hengist, share and share alike. I've got a cape, why shouldn't you have one?" Because Battle Bjarki, though he was strong, could also be gentle. After all, it takes strength to be gentle. And though he was brave, he wasn't without being nervous, and he was nervous right now because it was such a dark night. Yes, it was a dark and stormy night. It was very hard to see the route ahead. And he knew if he strayed off the path, there were peat bogs, and this part of the country is so deep that they could just suck a horse and rider and his axe, his helmet, none of it would float. There wouldn't be a trace that he'd ever been alive. And he didn't think being swallowed by a peat bog would get him entry into Valhalla. So he was being cautious. But then he reflected that fate is fate. Our lives are spun by the sisters that sit by the well of Urd, by the root of the world tree Yggdrasil, one of its 3 roots. They spin our lives. Bartleby knew this. However long the thread, that was the length of his life. If he was fated to die today, he would die today. But just in case it wasn't, he put in a little prayer. He prayed to Thor, the friend to mankind. He prayed for some help, and there came a rumble of thunder and a flash of lightning. The whole world quivered and cracked with bright and dark and bright. And Bodvar thanked Thor, because in that he saw the route ahead. He directed Hengist's nose, and also he saw a flare, a glow, coming from a house, a little farmhouse perhaps. And as the lightning quivered and cracked again, he was able to see enough of the path to direct his horse safely away from those peat bogs to this farmhouse, where he dismounted, walked to the door, knocked, and, well, you know these stories by now, he's going to ask for house room, for a shelter for the night. The door was opened by a tiny, frightened-looking old farmer, and at his shoulder, even smaller and more frightened-looking, was a tiny little old woman, a white-haired woman, and she spoke first, saying, "Is it Hood?" I said, "No, little mother, no, it isn't." "Well, who is it then, little father?" "I don't know, little mother, but give me a moment and I'll ask him. He looks to be a well-built fellow. He looks like a warrior." "Oh, perhaps he's bringing news of Hood." "Little mother, peace, be quiet, please." Bodvar was already intrigued. Who was Hood and what was their story? And so he gave them time. And they collected themselves, and the farmer said, "Sir, please, let me, do come in. Little mother will get you something to eat. We don't have much to offer, but what we have we can share with you. And let me stable your horse for you." And it was done. Bodvar was shown inside, where that little lady gave him a place of honor nearest to the fire and some food. It was some cheese and some black bread, and he was happy with that. And the farmer came in, having stabled Hengist, sat down, and they asked him who he was. And he said he was, a warrior looking for a king to whom he could hire his sword and be that king's henchman. It's a word nowadays in English, we only use that to refer to a criminal, but from the old Scandinavian, it meant, I guess I can see the connection. It meant a hired warrior. And they told their story. It was a sad story. They'd had children, more than one. But many of those children, well, they had a daughter who'd married years ago now, a man many dales away, and they'd never heard from her again, and they didn't really expect to. I mean, this is before Bluetooth. Communication was hard. And they had another child, another boy he'd joined a group of men who'd gone off raiding. Viking. It's not a nation, it's an occupation. And they'd not heard from him. Another had gone to try and find the land of the Rus, rich Scandinavian merchants who'd settled in the land we now call Russia, where they were able to set up a very rich kingdom because they controlled the flow of goods from the Orient into Europe. But they'd not heard from him for many years. Two children were lying outside under the turf. They hadn't made it to adulthood. And then their youngest, Hood, Their baby, the apple of little mother's eye, obviously. Last year, he'd left and he'd gone off to seek his fortune to the land of King Rolf Kraki, to find his castle palace and begin his way in life as a man. But they'd not heard from him, and little mother was so worried. He catches cold so easily, and he's such a gentle little boy. I mean, well, I'm very worried about him. And Battle-Bjarki said, well, that's an amazing piece of luck, because I happen to be heading for the court of King Rolf Kraki, and when I get there, I'll Hood, you say, I'll look for him, and I'll get him to send you a message. Well, the next morning, the storm, all that dark weather was gone. The sky was beautifully blue, blue as a cornflower. And Botvar-Bjarki got onto his horse and waved goodbye to the little farmer and his even smaller wife, and promised again that he would find Hood if he could and get him to send word back. It was early morning when he set out, and he rode all of that day until, as the sun was beginning to set, he caught sight in the distance of the castle palace, the stronghold of King Rolf Kraki. I mentioned this story has a lot to do with names. Kraki is another descriptive name, because Kraki means a pole ladder. It's a piece of very basic medieval military equipment. You know a ladder, right? It's got the long wooden bits with the rungs in between. Well, a pole ladder is half the weight. It's a pole with chocks coming off either side, and you carry it on your shoulder, you run at the wall you're attacking, you slap it up, and then you scramble up. Hopefully before they pour in Scandinavia and ancient Ireland, it wasn't boiling oil. Where can they get oil from? It's boiling porridge. Not pleasant. Not as hot as boiling oil, but nonetheless, I wouldn't volunteer for. Anyway, so that's a pole ladder. So King Rolf Pole Ladder, that was his name. I've never been sure. This could be descriptive, meaning that King Rolf Kraki was very tall and very thin, or, knowing Northerners and their love of deep sarcasm, he might have been very round and very fat. I don't know. But King Rolf Kraki was a rich king in Sweden. Well, Gylfi, listening to this story, knew this. He knew that name. In fact, King Rolf Kraki was one of his nearly direct ancestors. But this told him just how long Botvar-Bjarki and Hood had been sitting in Valhalla, because this was, generations ago now. There was nobody alive today who could remember King Rolf Kraki. Exciting to hear of it now, though. The warrior, Horst, continued with his story. And Gylfi listened. Bjarki rode and arrived at the castle stronghold of King Rolf Kraki. He's found the stables, lots of horses there, and simply put Hengest in a stall and said, don't worry, Hengest, my love. Somebody will look after you, you'll have hay and you'll have a roof. Now let's see about myself. Let's see what I can do. And he looked around the castle stronghold until he saw the door to what looked like the feasting hall. And he went inside. And inside there was a hullabaloo. There was a hurrying, a coming and a going as the royal court was getting ready for its evening meal. Huge tables had been set up in a U shape with the tables at the end for the king and his closest advisors and confidants and wives and the ladies of the court as well. And other men, warriors and their women, more warriors than women, if I'm honest, were beginning to sit down at the benches. And Bjarki was watching the servants setting up the tables and the platters and everything ready, and knives ready for people to eat. And then he saw the strangest sight. In the corner, it looked like a dry stone wall, but it was small and it wasn't made of stones. It was made of, was that bones? A servant was, excuse me, forgive me, I'm new here, but are my eyes playing tricks on me? Or over there, is that a pile of bones? To which the servant said, no, sir, you're right. That is a pile of bones. Sorry, I must go. The servant was gone. A pile of bones, a wall of bones. Botvar-Bjarki was curious, and so he walked to the corner, and it smelled a bit high, a bit funky. And he walked closer until he came to an intricately constructed wall of bones. And he looked over the top and saw on the other side shivering, snivelling, trembling, a young man of about 17 years old. And Bodvar Bjarki said, "Who are you? And what on earth are you doing behind this wall of bones?" Oh, begging your worship's pardon, sir, but this is my safe place. This is where I go. Yeah, but where do they come from? It's the people here, my lord. You're new perhaps, but I'm not saying anything bad about them. No, but they're playful, and when they finished eating meat, they throw the bones at me, and I made a wall to make me safer. But I'm not saying, I mean, they must have their fun, I know. But Bodvar Bjarki looked at this young man, and you could see that the wall hadn't quite done its work, because this young man had a little bit of blood under his nostril, and he had a black eye. He said, "My God. And this is how you live?" "Yes, this is how I live, because this is how I eat. Sometimes there's a bit of meat left on the bones they throw at me." And Bodvar Bjarki couldn't believe such a condition. He said, "What is your name?" "Oh, my name is Hood. Only people here call me Trembling Hood." Hood. This was what he'd come to? And Bodvar Bjarki could see that the nickname was accurate, because this lad was shivering with fear all over, and twitching and starting. But Bodvar Bjarki couldn't stand this. "No. I spent last night in the company of your mother and father. They showed me hospitality. So I'm going to do the same for you. Tonight, you're going to eat next to me. You're going to have a..." No, sir, I'm really..." No. And Bodvar Bjarki reached, grabbed Hood by the scruff of the neck, and lifted him bodily from behind his wall of bones, and dragged him, protesting, towards the bench, sat him down, said, "No, your mother and father gave me what they could last night. And I mean, come on, do you mean to send them a fortune of bones? Are you opening a glue factory?" "No, I mean, really, so. Oh, God." Hood was so scared. Other members of the court were arriving. The king had arrived and sat down and said to one of his advisors, "Who's that fellow over there with the large beard and the broad shoulders? Does anybody know who that is?" To which his baron next to him said, "No, Majesty, he's a newcomer." And the lady said, "He is a newcomer. He looks like he can handle himself." Then across opposite Hood and Bodvar Bjarki, another man was saying to his friend, "Who's this newcomer who insults us by forcing us to look at that snivelling wretch, Trembling Hood?" To which his friend said, I don't know, but he looks like he can handle himself." "We'll see about that." And Bodvar Bjarki was asking Hood, "Who's that fellow directly opposite us, the one with the fat face?" "Oh, his name is Eric, sir. Only everybody calls him Eric Fatface." "Yeah, he has got a fat face. I don't like it." "Yeah, so he's the one that started the bone throwing." "I thought so. Well, we'll see." And Bodvar Bjarki looked meaningfully in the direction of Eric Fatface. Well, at a certain point, Eric Fatface was eating, I don't know if it was a knuckle bone of ham or a shoulder of lamb, but it was a large bone with a lot of meat on it, and he was chewing his way through it and runching his way through it when he finished his last piece and then swallowed. Looked at Hood. Well, you know what he's going to do, don't you? And so did Hood. Eric Fatface drew that bone back past his ear to throw, and Hood, well, his instincts were trained. He was under the table in an instant, and from his hiding place he heard a whoosh, and then he heard a voice, Bjarki's voice, Battle Bjarki, Bodvar Bjarki's voice, and "Anybody else want to try their hand at throwing any bones in the direction of me or my friend Hood? Step up now. Anyone?" "Good. Hood, get up. You can finish your meal." And Hood On the opposite side of the feasting hall, where Eric Fatface had been sat, now there was an absence, there was a space, and then beyond it, a fair few feet back, Eric Fatface was picking himself out of the wreckage of a broken chair and rubbing a swelling black eye and staunching a bleeding nose. Obviously, Bodvar Bjarki had caught the bone meant for Hood and had thrown it back with interest. So now, Hood got to eat properly. And he began to fill out a little bit and he began to get a little bit less nervous. But that very night, the king, King Rolf Kraki, had sent a messenger to summon Bodvar Bjarki. And Bodvar Bjarki arrived and bowed and introduced himself. And the king said, "Well, you look like you can handle yourself. You're like a well set up fellow. I could use you. Do you want to take my coin and become my henchman?" And Bodvar Bjarki said, "Majesty, that's the very reason for my journey. That's why I came here. But having arrived, I've seen things which put me in mind to refuse your offer." "What do you mean?" Well, Battle Bjarki explained that he didn't like to see the way the bullying of Hood had been ignored. And he said, "Yeah, if you want me as your henchman, I will do you good service. Take me on, and I will fight for you. But my conditions are you take on my friend Hood." "Hood? I've never seen any trembling Hood. I've seen no signs of valor or bravery in that sniveling little wretch ever. Nonetheless, those are my terms." "Oh, you're a cheeky fellow, and I like your attitude. All right, those are your terms. These are mine. I'll take you on, and I'll take on your friend Trembling Hood. But he has a year to prove to me that he's got more to him than I've hitherto seen. Do you accept?" Well, Bjarki did accept. He went back to the table and told Hood. And Hood was, "You mean, yes." So Hood every night got to sit with the other men and got to eat with the other men. And he really began to lose his fear, his nerves, and he really began to, grow. I mean, he was only 17, 18 years old. And his ears would be wider than his shoulders for some time to come yet. But at least he was heading in the right direction now. And Bodvar Bjarki felt that it at least repaid the hospitality of little father and little mother. The season turned from autumn to winter. And one night when they were all feasting, there came a noise from the door, a kind of a scratching, a kind of a whining, and suddenly everybody was jumping, the beast, the beast! And Bodvar Bjarki was astonished to see the whole court erupt in terror and running around, and Hood was as well. And the king said, "For goodness sake, sit down. Don't you, I've been hunting. Have you forgotten I went hunting today? Don't you remember? That's my dog. Oh, somebody go and let Balder in." The door was opened and a huge hound, a beautiful Great Danish hound, a Great Dane, came running in, bounding in, and began to fawn at the king's feet. And the king was stroking the dog's ears, saying, "Yes, Balder, and you've got more bravery than any of this lot, haven't you? And you'd face that beast if I asked you to, but I wouldn't do that to you. No, not. But," he said, "you're probably right. It is the season that comes, the season of the beast approaches. We should probably go down just in case." And Bodvar Bjarki looked in amazement as all the court rose and began to walk towards the corner of the hall and a doorway which he'd never seen before. It was open for the first time he'd ever noticed, and people began to go downstairs, it appeared. And Hood was heading too, but Bodvar Bjarki said, "Stop, wait. What's going on?" And Hood explained that for years now the kingdom of King Rolf Kraki had been beset by a curse. In wintertime, a beast, a monster, a something, a horrible, a fanged, a clawed creature, nobody quite knew what, came out of the depths of night and attacked. And men had been lost, and livestock had been lost, and buildings and villages had been destroyed. And so now, when the season of the beast came at night time, everybody went down into the beast raid shelter underneath the castle. And a stockade was set up with some livestock in. And in the morning, there'd be scorch marks on the grass, no animals, and no lives lost. But Bodvar Bjarki said, "But have no warriors gone to face this beast?" "Yes, some, but none came back." "Well, what kind of beast is it?" "Well, that's the thing. Nobody knows because nobody's lived to explain it to anybody else." "Right, okay. So, if you don't mind, I think we should go down." "No. Hood, you have a year to prove to the king that you are brave. Tonight is the night. What if I'd rather it wasn't? That's not how bravery is won. Hood was terrified, but his friend, who'd never let him down, grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and the seat of the pants, friendly-like, and bundled him outside. Hood, trembling Hood, was trembling all over, and Battle Bjarki, with shield and sword, walked out into the night. They walked out across the grass, across the pastures and the meadows outside the castle stronghold of King Rolf Kraki, and they walked towards the stockade. It was a good stockade made with woods, with poles and planks, and inside there were cows walking around. And Bothvar Bjarki had brought his spear just in case it would be his use as well. And, well, so they walked out into the darkness and they climbed into the stockade. The animals ignored them. There was a large boulder inside the stockade, and Trembling Hood crouched behind that boulder. And they waited and waited and waited. And Hood would kind of peep and be relieved to see nothing, just darkness, just the cattle moving around, just the broad shape of his friend's back with shield and spear. And then at a certain point, Hood, oh, look, sir, Bjarki, my friend, we can go home. We can go back in now. Why is that? Well, look, the sky is reddening. It's dawn is coming. Yeah, I noticed that too. But tell me, Hood, when have you ever seen the sun come up in the west? Oh! Hood nearly lost his supper when he realized that Bothvar Bjarki was right. The sky was going red in the wrong place. And then it was growing dark again, and then going red again, and then dark again, and then a great jet of red, and then darkness again. And then there came a sound with those jets of red, a kind of a... And then another sound, a kind of... like some huge winged creature was flying towards them, and it was getting closer and closer, and then something whooshed over them. There was a shadow in the blackness, if that can possibly be, and the animals felt it, and they were beginning to run round and round in terror. And then something landed in the stockade, and Hood looked. His legs turned to water, his stomach turned to water. He saw a worm, a drake, a fire drake, a dragon, a monster from the ice and snows of Niflheim, perhaps. It was huge, great web-like wings, long jaws, long sharp teeth which Hood could see were sharp enough to cut a human hair lengthways, massive glowing eyes, claws like fangs like claws, scales like armor. Oh, it was terrifying. And then he saw his friend lift his spear, give his war cry, which was his name. Bothvar Bjarki! He threw his spear straight at the beast, and that iron point just skittered off those iron-hard scales. There were sparks, but then that spear fell uselessly on the ground. Bjarki drew his sword and again cried, Bothvar Bjarki, and went into the attack. And he was slashing and smashing and slashing and cutting with his sword, which skittered and crashed off those iron scales. The beast lifted itself into the air, came down again, pushed Bjarki backwards, and then opened its mouth and belched. And a huge gout of flame enveloped Bothvar Bjarki. Whimpering, trembling, Hood saw nothing, just a world of flame, and then in the midst of it he could just make out the black shape of his friend, and then the flame engulfed him again, and more flame, and then the flames diminished, and then Trembling Hood, shaking all over, could see that Bothvar-Bjarki's sword was ruined. The heat, perhaps, or the hardness of the beast's neck and flanks. Bothvar-Bjarki's sword was bent out of all recognizable shape, and it's impossible to swing a sword which isn't straight. And Bothvar-Bjarki was trying, and Hood was trying to make his friend hear him say, Bjarki, Bothvar-Bjarki, look, under its wings, on its breast, there's a patch. There was, but Bothvar-Bjarki couldn't hear him. There was a patch under the beast's wings, kind of here on the left-hand side, where there were no scales. And Hood could see, by the light of the flames the beast had emitted, which were now making the grass all around burn, he could see there was a patch of skin within those scales, and underneath that skin, Hood could see something was pulsing. But Bjarki couldn't hear him. And then, oh no, the beast, the great long tail came slashing around. Bjarki saw it. Jump! He jumped just in time. Otherwise, that tail would have cut him off below the legs. And then he saw the beast push Bjarki that way and then that way, like a mouse does with a cat. And then Hood saw with horror, he saw the beast's back quarters waggling slightly like a cat getting ready to pounce. And he knew he was about to see his friend killed. And suddenly, Trembling Hood's legs unfolded beneath him and he was running. But not away from danger. He was running straight to it. He ran straight towards Bjarki. He ran past him. He grabbed with his left hand the strong, long knife that Bjarki had at his belt. He transferred it to his other hand, well, both hands, to be honest. He dived under the wings of that beast and he closed his eyes and drove that knife into that patch where he'd seen there were no scales, and the beast's blood came bursting out. And it was so hot, it burnt Hood's hand, and it scorched the ground and melted that blade. And the blood jetted and gouted and hissed out. And the beast was thrashing this way and that way. Its tail was knocking cows and heifers everywhere, smashing the stockade. Its wings were rising up and flapping down. The beast was in its death agonies. Its head came crashing down. A great jet of flame became like two candle flames burning in its nostrils, and then they were dead. The beast was dead. And Bothvar-Bjarki turned to Hood and said, "You did it. You killed the beast. I know. I can't believe it." He looked at his friend. His friend had no eyebrows. His friend had no beard. His friend had no hair. His friend was scorched to the skin by the flames of that monster. But he was alive. "Hood, you saved my life." I did, didn't I? I can't believe it. "You killed that monster." "I did, didn't I?" "Hood, you're not the only one who won't believe it. Those fools in the castle won't believe it." "Hood, come." Well, he embraced. The two friends embraced. "Our work's not done here." "I don't understand." "They won't believe it unless they see it. Let's get to work, because we have to fake that which you in truth have done." And so they got poles, joists, and planks from the ruined stockade, and they began to put them under the chin of the beast, and under its wings, and under its body. They began to prop it up, to make it look like it was alive. And then, when they'd done that, and as the sun was rising, Bjarki gave to his friend his ruined sword, his ruined spear, and said, "Okay, I'll go now." And then Bothvar-Bjarki ran as fast as he could towards the castle palace, and then bam, 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 knocking on all the doors. "What's going on? It's me. What's happened to you?" I tried to face the beast. I couldn't defeat it. The only person between it and you now is Hood." "Trembling Hood, if you don't believe me, look." And the whole palace, they all, "Gods in Asgard, look, it's true." Because there was Hood, swinging Bothvar-Bjarki's sword. And as he did so, he'd kick a strut, and the beast would, and Hood would drive the sword and kick another strut, and they watched him fake what in truth he'd done. And when the beast fell down dead, everybody in the castle stronghold, they went, "Yay!" They came pouring out, they came rushing out to inspect the monster and to throw Trembling Hood up in the air and catch him like a hero, and up again and down again. And, well, out came King Rolf Kraki. And he congratulated both Battle Bjarki and Trembling Hood. And he said, well, a long time ago, I swore that whoever could kill this monster and rid my land of its curse would be rewarded with the weight of the beast in gold. And now I see that prize must be bestowed on Trembling Hood. No, said Bjarki, not Trembling Hood. Never let him be called by that shameful name again. No, let him instead be called by a name befitting that which he has found tonight. From now on, let him be called not Trembling Hood, but Manhood. And so it was done. And, said the warrior talking to King Gylfi, that was just the first of their adventures, because he said that Bodvar Bjarki and Manhood, they had many adventures fighting for King Rolf Kraki, and having found his courage, Hood never lost it. He became a very famous warrior. Oh, he was wiry, he wasn't big, but he was strong where it counted. And he sent gold back to his parents, and they lived out the rest of their lives, all their struggle and hardship rewarded in a golden sunset. And Bodvar Bjarki and Manhood remained the best of friends in the service of King Rolf Kraki until the day came, said the soldier, telling Gylfi the story, that they both died fighting bravely in battle, side by side. That's why they're here tonight. Wow. King Gylfi was delighted at the story. But then he said, and what about that fellow over there? Because way at the other side, there was an absolutely enormous warrior. A tall, tall man with huge shoulders, amazingly handsome. And next to him, a beautiful woman. I mean, of more than human stature, grace, strength, and beauty. And his neighbor said, that's one of the finest of us. That's Sigurd. His story is an interesting one, a deep one, a long one. We may not get to finish it tonight. I can start. It starts with the gods. Odin, Honir, and Loki. Odin had decided he wanted to stretch his legs. You know he does that sometimes. And so Odin, Honir, and Loki had come away from Asgard and now were traveling around. Well, they'd been traveling so far. Was it Jotunheim? Was it Midgard? Oh, it was Midgard. It doesn't matter where it was exactly. But they were traveling through tussocky grass and fine fields. And then they began to walk along the flowing river. Well, a lovely, rich river, a broad river. Trees either side. And they walked along here, picking their way and following it upstream, when Loki suddenly went, stop, wait, look. And up ahead, on a kind of a beach of shingle on the other side of the bank, about 40 yards away, lying on this beach of shingle was a very large otter. And this very large otter had a very big salmon, which he'd caught. And Loki went, wait a second. And reaching down, picked up a large, flat stone. And then, well, Loki was a very good shot. And he got the otter in the head, and he didn't wake up. And now Loki went fording in excitement across the stream until he got to the other side, and he called over to his friends, look at this, 2 for the price of 1. One hand, he held the dead otter, and in the other, a huge dead salmon. And when they joined him, he said, look, we can eat the salmon. And I mean, this is a very good otter pelt. It's a very big otter. We can make something out of this. I'm sure we can. And Odin said, yeah, we can. Only I've noticed there's a farmhouse up ahead. Why don't we need a bed for the night. Why don't we go and see if the family want to share the salmon with us? And well, who knows? We can we'll get a bed for the night at least, get a house room. So they did. It was agreed. They went to the farmhouse and knocked. And the door was answered by a farmer, a big, strong man, bearded, curly hair, iron grey. And this man looked at the gods. He recognized the gods and immediately did the appropriate reverence. And then Yeah, we're looking for a house room, and we can share this fish that we didn't catch, but well, we caught something else as well. And Loki said, yeah, look, I got them both. And he held up the fish and the otter. And this farmer, whose name, by the way, is Hredmar, suddenly stiffened, rocked back on his heels. And his face still had a smile, but his eyes, the smile had left his eyes. But he said to them they were welcome to come in. They followed him inside. He showed them to a hearth and told them to sit down and make themselves comfortable, and he would go and get his children so that they could attend to their guests. And then Hredmar left the company of the gods and walked down corridors in his large farmhouse. His children, who were grown up, by the way, 2 daughters, Lythe and oh, what's her name? Where are you, darling? Of course, Lythe and Lythe. That's the young women. And 2 of his 3 sons, Fafnir, a farmer like his father, and then the other son, Regin, a shrewd and skillful smith. They heard his father coming, but his feet sounded like they could hear, and what's going on? And they got up, and then suddenly the door into their room burst open, and Hredmar walked straight across the room and up to the turf wall on the other side, and just children, get this. We have guests. They have killed your brother. Otter is dead. And now we must show them hospitality. So here's my plan. There's one, the older one. He's got one eye and he's got a very useful looking spear. We need to separate him from that as quick as possible. Our only chance is if we surprise them, and I'll use my magic. Hredmar was also a very skillful magician to weaken them. Girls, you can help as well. Fafnir, Regin, you ready? You can do this. And so the family went to welcome their guests. You see, Hredmar's 3rd son was Otter. He was a fisherman. He was a shapeshifter. And what he liked to do best was to take on the shape of an otter, catch fish from that river, and share it with his family. And now he was dead. So the girls had brought the ale. The gods didn't know that Lythe and Lythe had spat in the cups before they filled them with ale. They smiled, gave them to the gods, and as the gods were drinking deeply, because they were thirsty after their long day's walking, Fafnir, Regin, and Hredmar attacked hard, and Odin's spear, Gungnir, remember that one from weeks ago? That went clattering across the other side of the room. Honir was wrestled to the ground, and I think it was Fafnir put a knee to the so he couldn't get up. And, well, the gods found themselves bound and face down on the gritty floor. And Odin was, what kind of welcome is this? To which Hredmar answered, better than you deserve. You've murdered my son. What? I don't understand. How can we have done any such thing? And Hredmar explained. And Odin said, that's not fair. Be fair. I regret the death of your son. Of course I do. But we killed an otter. How are we to know? I don't care. You've killed my son. Death for death. You will die. And Odin, All-Father, creator of the worlds, pleaded for his life, for Honir's life, for Loki's life, saying that he would pay a ransom. Name the ransom, and he would pay the greatest ransom he could. Hredmar considered. He eventually agreed that he would accept a ransom of gold, but not yellow gold. He wasn't interested in that. Red gold. And there had to be so much of it that he could stuff the entire skin of his dead son with it, and then cover it entirely so that not a trace of it showed above the gold. Red gold. He wasn't interested in yellow gold. Odin then hissed to Loki to listen. Loki rolled over. What? And Odin gave Loki instructions, and then said to Hredmar, keep me and Honir as hostage. Loki is the fastest. He will go and get you your ransom. And so Loki was released. So Loki, the mischief maker, is free to go. He's shaking the discomfort out of his wrists and his ankles. And he set off, following the instructions of Odin, or did he? He had an errand to run, but Odin, All-Father, Lord of the Gods, is bound and held captive. Do you think Loki ran his errand? Or do you think he dawdled it? Yep. Oh, he dawdled, he doodled, he took his time, he ambled, he peregrinated, he went all about the houses. Oh, he got lost a few times. Oh, what a shame. And found his way and found some very interesting places and very charming people in the meantime. And he pottered around Midgard and he pottered around Jotunheimen until eventually he came to the shore. And then he went deep into the sea until, following Odin's instructions, well, he did eventually find the cave of the sea spirit Ran, a kind of a giantess. And he spent a long time with her, keeping her company, entertaining her. In fact, he spent weeks feasting with her until, Ran, I'm forgetting, I did have an errand. How could I forget? But All-Father Odin all this time, by the way, is writhing on the ground, and Hrungnir the same. Well, Loki asked Ran if he could borrow her net. Ran owns a net of drowning. It's Ran's net that snags around the ankles of unwary swimmers who go too far or go into water which is too deep or too cold for them, and she drags them down. It is Ran's net that wraps around whole shipfuls of souls and drags them down to the bottom of the ocean. Ran agreed to lend Loki her net of drowning. And then Loki followed the further directions that All-Father Odin had given, and following a network of tunnels that led by means of junctions and tunnels and sub-tunnels until eventually he arrived in Svartalfheimn, which, if you've been coming to these on a weekly basis, you'll know is the world of the dark elves. And there Loki looked until he found what Odin had described, a deep pool. The waters dark and motionless, not a ripple. No mayfly, no fish to disturb. Absolute stillness. And into that stillness, Loki dropped the net and let its webs sink to the bottom. And then he caught up all the cords and pulled hard and fast. And yes, he got it. There was something in it. He pulled the net up, and writhing and fighting inside, it was an immense pike, a huge pike, a monstrous pike. And Loki dragged it away from the water and then said to the pike, minding to keep away from its nasty teeth, he took that pike, held it by the tail, and holding it and gazing into its yellow eyes, said, "You'd better change shape, because I will kill you." Change shape. And the next thing Loki knew, he wasn't holding a pike. He was holding by the ankle a dwarf, a Nibelung, whose name was Andvari. And the dwarf said, "Let me go, let me go." "I will," said Loki. He was now dunking the dwarf's head in the water, like a digestive biscuit into a cup of tea. So the effect was that the dwarf felt that he was drowning, even though he wasn't. It's a brutal thing to do. I can't imagine anybody doing something as wicked as that in today's modern age, can you? Anyway, Loki was doing that until the dwarf absolutely swore to give Loki whatever he asked for. And Loki said, "Good. Well, I don't want much. I just want all your gold, every last scruple of your fine red gold." And the dwarf was, but he'd sworn. And so he went into his workshop and into his tool shed and into his store cupboard, and he brought out ingots and big ones and little ones and nuggets and objects and works, things that he'd been working on, things he hadn't finished, beautiful pieces. And Loki just, "No, I don't care. Just put it in the sack, put it over there, put it in the sack, put it over there." And in it went, and in it went, and in it went, this huge sack swelling and bursting with red gold, until the dwarf said, "That's everything. There's nothing left." And Loki looked at him and said, "Show me your hands." "There's nothing left." "Show me your hands." "See?" "Show me your hands at the same time." Well, Loki prized this hand open, and there was a ring. The ring of the Nibelung. Not this one, please. If I give you this, then I won't be able to make more gold. Put it in the sack, or I'll kill you. And so, poor Nibelung, poor Andvari was weeping. He put it in the sack. Now he had nothing and nothing to make something with. Loki put that sack on his shoulder. Bye, you are ugly, and it was a pleasure robbing you. And he set off. And then as he left, he heard the door. Then my curse is on that treasure and on that ring, and evil will fall to whoever possesses it. And Loki looked back and said, hey, I like the sound of that. And if your curse will land, provided I repeat what you've just said out loud to someone else. Till then, it's in my power. Bye. Loki left. He made his way back to the farmhouse. There was Hredmar with Regin and Fafnir and the girls, Lofnhed and Linhed, and the gods still down there. And Loki arrived, and there was the sack. And the gods were freed, and they were shaking life back into their limbs. Hredmar and his sons were busy stuffing that otter skin with gold until it was almost bursting. And then Hredmar ordered the gods to pour gold on top, and the mound began to rise and rise until just the otter's nose was poking out, and then just a little bit at the top of the nose. And Odin said, there you are. It's done. Your debt is paid. Are we quits? No, said Hredmar. Look. A tiny bit of the nose was showing. So Odin reluctantly reached into his pocket. Because before this exchange had taken place, Loki had shown Odin the gold, and Odin had seen that ring and said, I want that one. That one's for me. And Loki went, yeah, I meant to give it to you. And he gave that cursed ring to Odin. But now Odin gave it to Hredmar. Well, he popped it on top, and it covered the last piece of otter. No trace of otter showed, not even a whisker. That ring was the final bit, that fateful ring. And then Loki opened his mouth and said, that ring is cursed. A curse is on whoever owns that ring, to which Odin was like, gave Loki what Winnie the Pooh would call a hard look. That curse will land. Whoever owns this treasure will be cursed. Much good may it do you. Bye. And the gods left. And Hredmar looked at the treasure. And Fafnir looked at the treasure and looked at his father. And Regin looked at the treasure and looked at Fafnir and his father. But Gylfi said, but weren't you telling me the story of Sigurd, that warrior? Said the warrior, yes, I was. See, here's the thing. Many years later, that young man, and he was a young man, was a foster. He's from a great Swedish family called the Walsungs. Well, Gylfi knew about the Walsungs. He had an ancestral connection to the Walsungs. They're one of the great. Yes, I know the Walsungs. And his father was one of the Walsungs, but he was staying with his uncle, who was a king of the Franks, which is in continental Germany now. And he was staying there. And well, as you know, a foster child is also a hostage. Yes, I understand how it works. Well, he was treated very well and given very many lovely things and was living the life of a prince. Until one day a stranger came to him who said to Sigurd, why does your uncle dishonor you? And Sigurd answered that his uncle treated him with great honor. Only the other day his uncle had given him a beautiful horse, a fine stallion, one of the best in the land. To which this man said, yes, I know, but you're of age, you're a strong man, you've got the makings of a warrior, and yet your uncle has not granted you the right to have a sword. Oh, but I don't need one, and I'm a guest here, I'm not one. You're a hostage. Listen, I think your uncle is doing you a dishonor. If he loves you, go and tell him to grant you the right to own a sword, and if he gives you that permission, I will make you that sword. I will make the finest sword that any warrior on earth has ever had. You can do that. Yes, I am a strong and skillful smith. My name is Regan. King Gilfrey said, Regan, is it? Oh. Well, Regan had said this, and Sigurd went to the king of the Franks, his uncle, and asked, would the king grant him the right to have a sword? And the king said, ha, I've been waiting for you to ask. Yes, of course. I know, I think I have a smith. And so Sigurd went back to Regan, the strong and skillful smith, and said the king had granted him permission. And Regan said, good, then I will make you the sword. Yes, the king, my uncle, has given me gold to give you. And he showed Regan gold. Regan looked, no, yellow gold. I don't want your yellow gold, no. I want your word. Give me your oath to do a little job for me. With the sword I shall make you. That's all I want. So Sigurd agreed straight away. And Regan got to work and blew up the storm in the forge, and the sparks flew, and he made an amazing sword. And when Sigurd lifted it and swung it above his head, it sang, it shook, it seemed ready, it seemed prancing in his hand, but he wanted to test it. And so he swung it around his head 3 times and brought it down on the anvil, and the sword shattered. And Sigurd said, it's not the sword for me. So I see. I'll make a better one. Regan got to work and made another sword, and this second sword quivered and sang and pranced like a horse in Sigurd's hand. And again he lifted it and swung it around his head 3 times and brought it down on the anvil. It didn't shatter this time, but it bent out of shape. To which Sigurd said, look at it, it's all bent out of shape. It looks like the sword in the story of Bodvar Bjarki and the Fire Drake. It's a wonderful story, do you know? Yeah, I've heard it. I'll make a better one. Regan got to work and made another sword, and this sword hummed. This sword looked hungry. It gleamed, it glowed. And Sigurd actually, as soon as he touched that sword, he felt like his hand was made for it. And he swung it 3 times around his head, brought it down on the anvil, and cut the anvil in 2 pieces. And the sword, and Sigurd said, this is my blade. Good, said Regan. And then Regan said, then we start tomorrow. And the very next day, Sigurd and Regan left the court of the king of the Franks and went traveling. And as they traveled, Regan explained how there was a family dispute he needed Sigurd to settle. And he explained how his father, Hredmar, had owned a great treasure of red gold, and how Regan's brother, Fafnir, had longed for that gold and kept going to the gold and running his fingers through it and looking at it and gloating over it. And then one day Regan had come home and he'd heard the sound of a struggle, and he'd run into the room just in time. He said, it's a terrible sight. I wish no man to see the like. I saw my brother, my dear brother, split my father's head with an axe. He murdered my father. Well, I was terrified. I ran. My brother Fafnir stole that gold. He's taken it, and now I'm taking you to where he's hidden it. And so Sigurd thought, good. I'm going to bring justice for a patricide, and it's right that I should do so. And then Regan said that half the gold will be mine, and that's also good. And so they traveled. And as they traveled, getting closer to where Fafnir was supposed to be living, Sigurd noticed less and less people, fewer and fewer settlements. No, said Regan, that would be because of my brother. And then he noticed lots of big trees snapped, and he noticed a huge track coming through the forest, massive track, which came through the forest. There was a mountain up there, and a wide track, wide enough for maybe 15 men to walk side by side. Through that track, down that track, it came all the way down to a deep lake. And Sigurd said, my God, what work, what engineering, what work of soldiers and king's men has cleared this great track? And Regan said, no, That would be my brother, Fafnir. I don't understand. My brother is changed. To kill your father is the act of a monster. My brother has become a monster. Gloating over that gold, my brother has grown powerful and strong and evil. And also claws like talons and talons like claws. My brother is a worm, Fafnir, the largest dragon in Midgard. This track is where you will wait for him. This track is where he comes every morning to drink water. And that's where we will set our trap. Oh, King Gylfi was, wow. And when further down the tables, suddenly the King Gylfi's interlocutor was interrupted because one of the warriors, I don't know the name, stood up, he had his drinking cup and he went, brothers, brothers, you put the left hand in, the left hand out. This is obviously something everybody knew because voices began to pick up. In, out, shake it all about. And soon everybody, including Sigurd, including Gylfi's friend, they were all standing, they were all singing, do the Loki Koki and you turn around. That's what it's all about. Clearly there wasn't going to be any more storytelling that night. Oh, the Loki Koki. Oh, because they were all singing their hearts out. Oh, the Loki Koki. That's what it's all about. Well, there was to be no more storytelling that night, and there's to be no more storytelling for you this night. And next week is our last in this series. So please, I hope you've enjoyed tonight. Show your support for storytelling, storytellers, and for me and James. This is what we do for our living. And make a contribution into the hat. You've been very generous in the past. And next week I'll tell you what I've told you I'll tell you. And as for the rest of the story of Sigurd and Fafnir, that might have to wait until another season. And as for the Loki Koki, I'm afraid they're going to be at it all night. I can do no more. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, Giles. Thank you, Jenny.
I bet you never knew that's where that song came from.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Giles. It was good.
Thank you, Julio. Thank you very much.
See you next week.
See you next week. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Giles. Good night.
Thank you. That was great. Really enjoyed it.
Can't hear you, John. John,
I think, John, you're at the bottom.
Of days. We've got Julie Southwood from.
We can't hear you, John.
Right at the bottom well. Okay. Is that better? Is that okay?
It's better.
Sorry, I forgot I was using this machine. That's okay. Well, just well done. And look at the program. What we coming up? We've got Julie Southwood from South Africa tomorrow night, and of course the magazine celebrating Midsummer with various tellers on Monday night.
Wonderful.
Meanwhile, thank you for attending, and don't forget, Giles. Every week he gets thinner, and we need to bulk him up again, like a trembling hood. Drop a penny in, drop more than a penny, drop some pounds into his hat. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. Julio, mulțumesc. Abdul, shukran jazilan. John, thank you. Mike,
Thank you, Giles.
And I will see you next week for the last in this series. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.